Bullshit. Pretend for a moment we've entered a parallel universe, free of bullshit and full of bold solutions. That's what the No BS Marketing Show is all about. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Our guest today is Priscilla McKinney, but first, let's cut the bullshit. Ever heard of Ettore Sottsass? Probably not, but you've certainly been influenced by him. Sottsass was an architect and designer who helped design the exterior of one of the world's first computers back in 1959. In the 1960s, he designed the iconic fire engine red Valentine portable typewriter. Then he developed the yellow and brown aluminum chair design used by offices around the world in the 1970s. He might regret that one. But the thing that Sottsass designed that impacted us most of all was his collection of 57 pieces ranging from a polychrome couch to a bookshelf made out of particle board, colored in what would become 1980s neon. The Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York is showcasing Sottsass's art in an exhibition this summer. Why am I telling you all this? Because Sottsass's 1980s neon is an example of how each era has its own look and feel. And my guest today will talk to you about how important your look and feel is and how visual elements are essential to telling your story. The problem with different eras and the look and feel is that companies need to be aware of that and update their look and feel too. I've had clients struggle to change a dated look, like a font that screams the 90s for a company that's doubling in size in 2017 and 18. We as consumers subconsciously think of different eras, different times based on what we see, the fonts, the colors, the clothes. That's why movies and shows incorporate a couple of memorable images to convey a different time period. We see it, and it puts us right back in time, even if that era was before our time. Sometimes companies need to change their look too if it's dated. They need to fight off their emotional ties and realize that maybe they're the only ones who see that nostalgic look as a positive. In other words, they need to cut the BS. Our guest today is Priscilla McKinney. Priscilla is the president of Little Bird Marketing, a boutique marketing firm based in Joplin, Missouri. Her company serves the Midwest, specializing in delivering premier graphics and creative ideas to clients. She's a branding and digital marketing expert and keynote speaker. Priscilla, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I am so excited. I am a fan. I am a listener. So I'm really happy to be on the show.
Well, this is great. We're happy to have you and we're glad you listen. And I wrote that rant especially for you because I know that you rock it from a visual standpoint. So what'd you think about that and the 1980s neon and people having fonts that scream 1994?
I love it. We have a couple of rules here at Little Bird. And first is you cannot say the word brochure. You can't use the word trifold. And definitely you cannot use Comic Sans. So I appreciate your use of fonts. And, we have a lot of kerning and typography and font jokes. So let's just suffice to say we're total nerds when it comes to look and feel. So no, I don't usually get to start a podcast or any kind of interview or a keynote talking about art, but that's just near and dear my heart. And I think that people are just not as in tune with really art that's all around us. It's around us every day. And what is marketing and branding, but just current art. So it may not be in a museum, but it is affecting you every day.
And you probably have clients that maybe need to convey a certain look. We had one client that is an automotive HR type client, and they said, "Look, I want to convey the glory era." So we actually built a logo with fonts that conveyed 1958. So I'm sure you do things like that as well. Do you have any examples of that come to mind? I don't put you on the spot, but
No, I don't think it's put me on the spot, really. I should know my stuff, but what I boil all of those things down to is professional legitimacy, because we can talk about art, and I like to get fixated on that kind of like why. I think that's what you already went very deep with it, that there's a glory era, there's this golden age that people are thinking of, and so when they think of that, you want to tie that idea of glory or prestige to the brand, and so you're doing that in someone's brain by using their subconscious instead of having to become conscious of it. And basically, that professional legitimacy is basically saying, I don't want to talk about myself, but I want you to know everything about me. That's so great. And you can truly choose a font, choose a color, choose an image that conveys all those things without you having to sound like you're a total jerk who's stuck on yourself. And so if you can take that idea, from a person, and convey that into a brand and a logo, I think it does that job of establishing professional legitimacy and giving someone already a thread to go on once they do open their mouths and start talking to you. It's really important.
I love it. And this might end up being like a 6-hour show because the two and I are going to click. We're just going to go off on this stuff. But let's do it. Let's go all the way back. Let's start by having you walk us through your educational background, your career journey. What led to all this inspiration to be what you are and to have built this company?
Well, gosh, I don't know what created everything, but I will say this. I love art. And like you came from the rant, talking about that. I had kind of an expensive education for a poor person. And I say that, jokingly, but my parents were missionaries. I grew up in Europe. And so I went to some very great schools, private schools, that really, had we been living in the U.S., I couldn't have afforded to go to. So I had what I think is a very privileged education, and art and museums. You mentioned the New York Museum, and I do speak a lot for living. And this last year, Chicago and New York and London were highlights, and you better believe I spent 2 full days at different museums in each one of those cities before I left, because that is just, that's my love, and I think that's what has fueled some of my career path. But to get nitty gritty to it, I came back to the States. I went to 4 different high schools in 3 different countries, and then came back to the States for college. I went to a private Christian college out in California called Vanguard, and I got a degree in cultural anthropology. And so I don't have a degree in marketing. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
But cultural anthropology is really marketing.
I was about to say that.
Yeah. What do you think when I say that?
I was seriously thinking that's about as close to marketing, honestly, as you can get, because it's really talking about people and insights and philosophies, and that's trends, cultures. That's really what marketing is.
Right. And how we impart our values, or how we come in society to have tacit agreements. Oh, this is okay. This is not okay. How we look at things, how we judge things. And, that age old can't judge a book by its cover, but that's exactly what, your rant's about, is that we do. And the people who don't realize they're judging a book by the cover are just really denying, in powerful denial. So I got my degree in cultural anthropology. I did work briefly for American Foundation for AIDS Research. I was doing qualitative research. But that, there's not a lot of jobs out there for cultural anthropologists. I don't know if you've noticed this.
I did notice that.
Yeah. I don't know if you would advise your children to get that degree, but I certainly don't regret it. But I put myself through school in banking, and I rose through the ranks everywhere from being a teller. I talk a lot about my claim to fame is, I was a teller with Will Ferrell out in California. So
really?
Back before he was discovered. Yeah, this is not very unusual career path, right?
So wait, you got to talk about that for a minute. So you two are tellers, and you're gregarious and he's gregarious. It had to be hilarious is what probably happened.
It was hilarious, but I had a roommate at the time. The 3 of us worked together, and she was hilarious. So, I mean, it was really, it was unprecedented. It's probably the most fun that anybody has ever had in a bank ever.
I can't see Will Ferrell lasting very long. How long was he there when you worked together?
I only worked with him about 6-7 months, something like that. I have a pretty poor memory, so I'm going that's reaching back 20-25 years right now. So, but yeah, so I put myself through college in banking, and that's what was paying. And so I learned accounting. I worked in a fraud department. I learned credit cards, and that's what the machination was of my first company that I started. I am a serial entrepreneur, and I still have the first company, which is a credit card processing business. And that still runs, but my employees are actually through Little Bird Marketing. So that kind of helped pay the bills in order to do what I love to do and what I kind of can't stop doing. What is my, what Kristen Wheeler would call her native genius. I'm in my element. And so I guess in 2009, so about 8 years ago, I actually purchased a marketing company from somebody and ended up dismantling it completely. And then my entire studio burned down.
Whoa.
So yeah, I had it, the other company was running, and 3 weeks after we went through the unprecedented F5 tornado here in Joplin, 3 weeks later, I came in the morning and the place is burning down. So I've had to start over and rethink what I'm doing. And I think that's one of the reasons also why you and I connect is that, listen, I don't have time. I experience this at the core. I don't have time for bullshit. Let's just get to the core of what can I do for you? What do you need? What really is, what's really the driving why? Why do I need to get up today? Why do you need to get up today? And let's see if we can help each other out.
Mm-hmm. That's some incredible stuff. I have to touch on a couple of things. So I have to go back a little bit. You grew up in Europe. What parts of Europe, where'd you spend a lot of your time growing up there?
Well, my parents were in Spain, so I did live in Spain quite a while, and then I went to boarding school in Germany. So I was there just my last year before we moved back to the U.S. So I have a lot of great friends still from boarding school, and anywhere I go to keynote, I always have a friend. It's pretty nice.
How did you adjust to 4 different high schools in, I think you said 3 different countries? Because, the high school years can be tough, but they're also awesome and they're also memorable, and there's bad times and all that stuff because it's your coming of age. Talk about that. That's an interesting experience.
Well, I think you could fall back to the first idea is that kids don't know better. They think their life is the same life everybody else is having. I think I was a little bit in tune with the fact that we were unusual, just because I knew all my counterparts in the U.S. were basically coming back into the same school, but I couldn't understand really what that meant. There were a lot of things about my life that were really exciting. I loved the idea, hey, don't worry about it. I'm going to be in a new school next year anyway. So
that's true. I didn't even think of that. You do have anything bad happens, you just go, oh, well, I'll be somewhere else next year.
Well, don't worry about it. The only thing that was just nerve wracking was that my parents never seemed to really get us there the first day of school. So I don't know. I love them to death, but I'm just I'm the 5th of 5 girls, and I'm just thinking, what are you thinking? We have to be at school. I notice you incorporate that into your writing a little bit, as do I. Like I reference my 3 sons and my brother and so forth, but I've seen in some of your writings about being the 5th of, did you say 5 sisters? I think you said. 5 girls. Yeah.
So you incorporate that a little bit. That was probably interesting growing up.
Yeah, you definitely have to be what I would describe as, figuratively running in place, like in terms of a conversation, in order to get a word in edgewise at my house when the family's there. We have 5 very opinionated, very strong, very fierce chicas, and the first thing people usually say is, "Oh, your poor dad," and I'm thinking, what? That guy didn't get up to get anything his whole life.
Yeah, he had it good.
Poor mom.
He had it good.
Let's settle on my poor mom.
So I'm impressed with a number of things. Talk about, I love when someone had the courage to start a business early and to continue as a serial entrepreneur. I don't have that in my DNA. I have some entrepreneurial spirit, but I'm a calculated risk taker. Talk about being a serial entrepreneur in that first company that actually is still working for you today, and it's a credit card processing company. Talk about how you even get to that point where you jump in and do that business at a young age.
I guess that does come back to some of my growing up. I mean, you're going to be in a new school. Well, I don't know. It just didn't occur to me that I couldn't do it. That's, I have had a lot of people, in my adult life now comment on the fact, gosh, Priscilla, I wish I had a little bit of that confidence you have, or a little bit. And I think they touch on it as confidence. And sometimes it's confidence. Sometimes it's obliviousness. Sometimes it's just, sometimes I'm sure it's, the risk, maybe I shouldn't take it. But I just have to be who I am. I do have a very optimistic outlook on life. Uh-huh. And I think you have to have that when you're taking risks, because it's the one thing that can numb you to the fact that you don't realize you're taking risks. And I do like Malcolm Gladwell's, work on, in Blink, that concept of, it's not just sheer risk. You're saying something's coming out of you instinctually from all of your other experiences. So it's not like I, looked at something like, yeah, I could do that, and I'm not basing it on facts. Yeah, I can do that because I know I have that demeanor that it takes to be bold and to stay in business when business doesn't look like it's something you should stay in. And all of us as entrepreneurs have been there, and we've had failures, and it's been hard, and we've made big mistakes. But it really is about saying, must I do this tomorrow? Must I do it like this again tomorrow? And for me, I must. I don't know.
We're going to dig into more with Priscilla McKinney. Are you using Audible yet? If not, you can get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/nobs. Try a book like How to Win at the Sport of Business. If I Can Do It, You Can Do It by Pittsburgh native Mark Cuban. You can download it for free today. Go to audibletrial.com/nobs. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. The No BS show today has Priscilla McKinney, a fantastic guest already. I'm excited. She's talked about growing up in Europe, Spain, and Germany, going to 4 different high schools in 3 different countries. And we're touching on her being a serial entrepreneur. And it's just exciting to me to hear someone tell this story. But I have to ask, what made you choose credit card processing, and when did you do it? Was it like pre-internet or at the beginning of the internet? And what was your first format? Were you the salesperson? Tell me a little bit about it. It's exciting to me.
Okay, I'll try and keep it really short. But putting myself, through college in banking, basically, I just kind of kept working up the ranks there, and eventually, I worked for a company and worked in their credit card department, and started working in a lot of like Rocky Mountain Bank Card and things that were in that industry. Well, like I said, it was paying. That's where I go. I go where the money is, right? So that was paying, and I learned a lot of skills there. Eventually, when I moved back to California, there was an opportunity that a credit card processor needed someone who was very gregarious. They needed a project manager. They needed a very big people person, but they needed to understand finance. They needed to be able to do math on their fee. They needed to be able to talk in basis points. And that was the world that I had learned, hands-on. And I am a born salesperson. My mom would assure you of that, since I cut all of her tulips off at a very young age and sold them around the neighborhood. Like, here, I've been an entrepreneur since I was young. And my mom also likes to remind me I wasn't cutting any deals. I think I was selling them for 1 for a nickel and 2 for a dime. So apparently I've been a tough negotiator for a long time as well. But I got an offer to work as a project manager for a company that had serviced 60 of the top U.S. ski resorts in credit card processing. So I came on with an amazing boss, an amazing mentor, and then a salesperson who basically was such an amazing salesperson that she could not handle her portfolio. So I needed to come in between, somewhere in between, nuance between customer service and this very high flyer, kind of difficult, but really truly amazing salesperson. And her portfolio was so big, but they were also very important people. The owner of Vail, the owner of Aspen, and they couldn't just call a 1-800 number. And so I found myself sometimes dealing with, some interesting customer service issues, some pricing issues. And I've even skied, down a mountain with credit card terminals in my backpack after I've, fixed some technical problems. So, I've had a really interesting run. Well, I learned the credit card industry from there. And then I was managing a portfolio, and I wanted to move to where we are now. We actually live in Kansas, so I'm right next to Joplin, Missouri. But I wanted to move, and they didn't want to lose me, which was kind. And they let me move here and work from home. And it was a process by which they ended up selling the company, and I didn't see it coming. I was on management team, but I was not in senior management, and I owned shares in it. And so I finally got advised of it. And so I didn't become an entrepreneur by will, I guess, which is interesting because it's such a strong drive in me. But I find that an interesting part of my story. It really, in a lot of ways, was forced on me in some way. And you hear that common denominator with a lot of the entrepreneurs. I don't know if that resonates with you, but I feel like there's nothing else for me to. This is my thing. This is my chance.
That's exactly what happened to me.
Yeah. So I did. And I was managing a portfolio. It was totally, I checked all my NDAs and I had great relationships with everybody on every side. And I was going to go work for another company. And the people I was servicing were just saying, can you just have your own? And can we just work with you? And so I was like, yeah, I did it. And I remember working the first 30 days and got my $75 check. So I've come a long way.
You framed it probably, right?
Are you kidding? I cashed that in like 2 seconds, dude. I needed that $75. So it has been, a really interesting ride. And that is a residual based business once you sell that contract. So I had to become the salesperson then, in order to own my own. So I stepped up into that role where someone had mentored me. And so I learned how to handle that and how to sell people, something they needed, but in a little bit more dynamic way than the last person who was in their office.
There are so many takeaways for listeners, but when you think about it, you were doing a job to get through school that you learned, and that happened to me and it happened to a lot of entrepreneurs. Is any job that entrepreneurial types have, they take and learn it and become like an expert at it, and it helps them at other points in life. Like I was on the radio from age 16, so podcasting to me is just something that it comes to me a little more naturally because I started doing radio and TV and newspaper stuff when I was a teenager, had my own business when I was like 10 with my brother. So I love that you sold the tulips. Another thing that I absolutely loved was you talked about difficult and amazing salesperson. I think that's a common thing. And that's why a lot of times someone like you can fill that role, because many of the top tier salespeople are difficult. And so they need someone else with them to kind of soften that. So you talked about that. And also in your upbringing and your life, you talked about the buying a company and then rebuilding and changing that company and then the studio burning down. I mean, there's like about 3 things in there that don't happen to any of us, and you had them all happen to you. So first you bought a company, which took some courage. Then you changed the company, and then the studio burns down. Let's go through that whole sequence. What made you buy the marketing company and so forth?
Well, it's a little bit of a kindness from my husband. It made no financial sense, honestly. If I had stayed in solely doing credit card, processing, I'd probably be making more money right now. But I was so bored out of my mind. And, you can see from cultural anthropology and the dynamics that I have, I'm not the person who's made to sell a commodity. I'm just not. And it was really great. And I learned a lot. And I still have the company. It pays the residuals. But, my husband could tell I needed a change. And when I would end up talking with someone I was selling credit card processing to and talk to them about marketing, because we were talking ostensibly about credit card processing, saying, how can you get more sales, or how can we make your average sale ticket higher, which would help your rates? I've always taught, took a lot of different approaches on pricing. It's like, okay, well, you could ask me for a rate reduction, or we could talk about what we could do together so that your average ticket's higher, that you get more sales, and it doesn't matter what you're paying me anymore. So I would offer a lot of these, I was ending up doing backroom clandestine marketing meetings with people. And I couldn't, I couldn't let anybody know that I really wanted to be a marketer at heart. And my husband, he saw all the signs and he's like, you were talking with someone about marketing again today, weren't you? And I was like, yeah. He's like, because you're in a great mood. So, when that opportunity came up, I actually just bought the leasehold improvements from somebody. So it was kind of an interesting thing. I didn't really buy the book of business. So I wasn't really, I wanted that office space and I wanted that name and that kind of look and feel she had. So I bought that. But I learned, just from the very beginning that, gosh, these clients that are here, this is not my forte. I can't help them. We're not on the same, wavelength. And, I never had that cushy agency job that other people come from in marketing. I never, it's been 15 years now that I'm the sole breadwinner of my family. It's do or die. So I had to figure it out, pretty quick. And I'm glad that I didn't have that background of a cushy agency job, because then I would have been in a lot of pain, because that's a lot of pain starting a marketing agency from the ground up.
You're telling me. So you've lived right? my craziness too. So then you go and you realize that their model was not pure marketing, and the cultural anthropology helps you to understand people and understand that is what marketing is all about, is understanding people. You change the mindset, you change the culture of the firm, and then tragedy strikes and the studio burns down. What do you do the day that happens and the days after that? And how long did it take you to get back on your feet?
Yeah, the first thing you do is you ask for help. And that's what I did. And it turns out I'm a very helpable person, because I'm a very teachable person. And when I ask for advice, I actually take it. So I chose very carefully who in this town I asked for advice. And they gave it to me, and I cried as I heard it. It was things I did not want to do. And yet I did those things. And I really look back and say that because I listened to those people who had their wits about them at a time when I did not have my wits about me, that is why I'm still here today. And so I think when you're in trouble, the first thing we like to do, especially as entrepreneurs, because it is a very lonely experience, we like to hide a little further. And my biggest takeaway from that was, don't hide. Go ask for help. Get specific. Don't say, oh, help me. Nobody can help that. But help me figure out this. What do you think about this? What should I do with X? Being very specific. So from that, I did need to take some space after. I just kind of had to, clear my thoughts. But I realized that I could either just completely walk away, and that would be fine. We're done. But I really owed it to the clients who had taken a chance on me. That here's a person without a marketing degree, and she's been doing crazy things in town nobody else has been doing, and she has this crazy dream, and they were paying me retainers. And that the gratitude that, I get a little choked up thinking about it right now, the gratitude that I had for those customers who believed in me really early, without all of those credentials behind me. I felt like I owed it to them to get in there and do it bigger and better, and not make them a laughing stock for having believed in me. So that's what I did. I just, and I don't like this. It's not like I steeled myself up. I did not do those things on my own. I had a lot of support, and I asked for a lot of help. And then I was able, to move into it. And then actually I changed the name. It became Little Bird Marketing, and I really got to make it my own. And culture, is a big part of that. I believe absolutely in building the right culture, and it's very difficult. But as a cultural anthropologist, at least I think I have a little bit of head start on that one.
I think you do. What is the genesis of the name Little Bird Marketing?
Well, when you hear something fantastic, typically people start by saying, oh, a little birdie told me, blah, blah, blah. And that gives you the inclination, number one, not only that it's great news because they're passing it on, but they're also trying to tell you tacitly that they're in the know, that they're important because they know this information. So it's a very engaged statement. And I wanted to work with companies who we wanted to create a buzz, or we wanted it to be where they were premier, they're at the top of the game, and that their clients or their customers felt like they were in the know, like they got a little secret, they've got something really great going on. And so we really started the company being a much stronger branding and imaging company. And that's really where I learned a lot about professional legitimacy, and cut my teeth on design. And just pulled from what I did know in my art background. Thank God, my parents always loved art. And so that's how I grew up in museums, so I learned a lot there. But that little bird concept is really trying to always stay at the core of intimacy.
Fantastic stuff. Hear more of my interview with Priscilla McKinney in part 2 of the No BS Marketing Show.